I now give the floor to the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. President. We would like also to welcome the Secretary General to this meeting. Mr. President, the Syrian government enhances its efforts towards the restoration of security and stability, and it's taking all measures necessary to overcome the repercussions of the crisis through reconciliation and local settlements, in addition to repairing infrastructure and the affected service facilities to improve the livelihoods of Syrians and to facilitate voluntary, safe, and dignified return of Syrians. However, terrorism relentlessly continues against my country, especially through the Turkish regime threats by way of act of aggression, or the direct aggression by the Israeli forces, as well as the attacks launched by various terrorist organizations. The Israeli aggression on the Damascus airport that was launched on 10th of June has caused damage to the airstrips as well as the technical fixtures and the terminal, a matter that caused the airport to come to a complete halt until further notice, a matter that entails political, humanitarian, military, and economic repercussions that will be suffered by all Syrians and the countries of the region, including those who depend on UN air-operated humanitarian aid that are operated through Damascus airport and which have been halted totally. The residing coordinator of the United Nations in Syria stressed in a statement on 13th of June that UN air humanitarian trips have facilitated the movement of 2,143 humanitarian workers as well as life-saving supplies. Those trips also delivered aid to more than 2 million Syrians in the governorates of Aleppo, Hasaka, Deir ez-Zor, and Raqqa. All those trips came to a complete grinding halt after the Israeli aggression against the civil airport facility. Notwithstanding the foregoing, certain Western delegations continue to obfuscate this Israeli aggression and the repercussions thereof on humanitarian action, and they don't even allow the Security Council to condemn such action as an egregious violation of the international law and the international humanitarian law, as well as the legally binding protection for civil objects. I would like to remind the ladies and gentlemen members to this council that this Israeli aggression is not the first against the Damascus International Airport or on other functional civil and commercial facilities, as well as sea and airports, a matter that jeopardized civil, air, and sea transportation as well as navigation, notwithstanding the lives of civilians. I have informed you before and depicted to you the Israeli aggression that was launched against Latakia port on 17th of December 2021, which caused staggering damage sustained by UN-owned facilities in Syria. Mr. President, in very clear and unequivocal coordination with such Israeli aggression, we now hear the threats of the president of the Turkish regime that he is determined on launching a military action in Syria in the north with the so-called objective of establishing a safe zone. This unequivocally proves the aggressive policies by Erdogan and is a continuation of his subversive practices to destabilize Syria by way of supporting terrorism as well as displacing people and causing demographic change. In addition to the Turkification policy, which is considered as ethnic cleansing in certain geographical zones where his illegitimate forces are present in addition to his terrorist agents. On the other hand, Mr. President, terrorist groups continue their crimes against Syrians, the most recent of which is the civil bus this morning that was attacked by Daesh. on the Raqqa-Homs road, which claimed the lives of 11 officers and 2 civilians and the injury of others. And this terrorist act coincided with some reports of the escape by 30 ISIS agents from one of the detention centers that are controlled by Qassad separatist militias and which are supervised by the U.S. occupation forces. Ladies and gentlemen, we have listened to the briefing of Mr. Martin Griffith, the USG, and we totally recognize the challenges that he is facing together with his team in collaboration with the Syrian government to provide support to Syrians due to the obstacles that are imposed by Western countries and donors who chose to politicize a humanitarian act and to enlist the same against my country. Those countries have directly and indirectly refused to implement Resolution 2585, which was unanimously adopted by the Security Council 1 year ago, as the members thereof agreed to take serious and tangible steps to enhance humanitarian delivery from within the Syrian territories, as well as increasing early recovery projects today. And while this resolution is about to expire, the members of the Security Council are again discussing the renewal thereof. And some of them have been launching media campaigns calling for renewing the resolution, notwithstanding the fact that they have been for so long trying to fail it. Just a realistic glance on the results of the implementation of this resolution will show that it has not realized any of the objectives pursued thereby. And in this regard, I would like to highlight a number of points. First, the concerns and the staggering defects of the cross-border mechanism have not been addressed, especially as it violates the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of Syria, in addition to the absence of any transparency in its function and its cooperation with unknown parties, and turning a blind eye to the humanitarian aid that ends up in the hands of terrorist groups that control the zone of Idlib and invest the same for gaining allegiances. Secondly, humanitarian delivery is super selective as Western countries reneged on their commitments to enhance delivery of humanitarian aid from within, and they continued to focus on the cross-border mechanism. This was manifest in the disparity between the number of cross-border convoys and cross-line convoys. For more 5,000 trucks of cross-border mechanism throughout the last 11 months, we only witnessed the crossing of 5 convoys, including 70 trucks, only cross-line. Only 5,000 in return for 70 trucks cross-line. This is but evidence on the misinformation that was propagated by Western countries as regards the resolution, as they are fighting the implementation thereof on the ground. Meanwhile, those countries turned a blind eye to the obstacles that were placed by the Turkish regime and its terrorist agents as regards the implementation of the resolution. In fact, the Turkish regime and the terrorist agents are the only beneficiaries of this mechanism. Third, the so-called donors community was not with the implementation of Resolution 2585, as the donors took steps that run counter to the resolution, and they spared no effort to fight the principle of early recovery and resilience, and they excessively linked the same to politicized conditions. In light of the foregoing, my country holds the United States, the UK, and France fully responsible for the failure of the implementation of the main pillars of Resolution 2585. And we stress the necessity of not being fooled by the misinformation campaigns launched by those countries by claiming falsely that the renewal of this resolution is necessary. Pressurizing the United Nations into issuing resolutions or into issuing statements that are known to be fake is totally refused. Mr. President, in conclusion, we renew our request that the economic terrorism policies and the collective punishment incarnated in the unilateral coercive measures imposed by the United States and the European Union on the Syrian people should stop, as this is an obstacle to humanitarian aid, because those who stand in solidarity with the Syrian people should not impose such UCMs. Syria calls upon the Security Council and the Secretary General to uphold their responsibilities and put an end to the acts of aggression against the sovereignty, independence, unity, and territorial integrity of Syria, and to put an end to the illegitimate military presence on the territories of Syria, as well as the sponsorship of terrorist organizations, separatist militias, and pillaging of national and assets of the country. It is totally unacceptable for the Security Council to stay silent vis-à-vis all those violations of the United Nations Charter. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic for their statement.